Welcome, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 25. And this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 375-414-6055 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to meeting. All right, I call us to order at 6:03 p.m. And welcome, Carolyn. Right, can I get a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, we are hybrid today, so I need to do a roll call. Dennis,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Carolyn, Bonnie.
Aye.
There says aye, thank you. All right. So that brings us to approving the outstanding minutes. We have, you should have received January 17th, February 6th, and March 6th. Did everyone have a chance to review those? And they are in your printouts. If you did.
Dan will be a little bit late.
Okay.
Just on the February 6th, Katie. On other updates, the update on National Grid,
Yes.
the second sentence. Bringing electric from Park Street involves permitting from the railroad, but is simpler than coming from Devon's, which would avoid fish and wildlife easements. I think that avoiding the fish and wildlife easements is caused by coming from Park Street. So I don't know whether you want to change the avoid to required. You see what I mean?
It's the opposite, isn't it? If we come from the triangle, we have to deal with fish and wildlife.
Right.
easements. If we come from Park Street,
We
we
don't,
don't.
right. But I think that what you said there is,
Oh, okay,
you see what I mean?
okay, yeah, which would involve fish and wildlife. Okay, I'll switch that. Thank you. I see what you're saying, sentence structure.
Mhm.
Yeah, just me.
Uh,
Okay.
Which one is this? March 6th?
February 6th. On the back.
That was this was my extreme attempt to make it fit on one piece of
Yeah, yeah,
paper.
no,
But not AI generated. Human error.
I have a couple of, it's just my name is spelled inconsistently. On January 17th, it's got a small p for Fitzpatrick, both at the list and also in the body. It's correct, in February, March, it's the same thing,
So which is the correct one?
capital P.
Capital P. Oh, really? That's cool.
So, both in the list we there and cited inside in the
I
first
didn't know.
paragraph,
I'll
the
change.
second paragraph,
I will change that.
yeah. Okay.
For all these years. No, I.
I've always had if they don't call me Fitzgerald. Okay.
Right, any other provisions? All right, then can I get a motion to approve the minute as revised?
I move that we approve the minutes for January 17th, February 6th, and March 6th as revised.
Okay. Okay, Dennis,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Carolyn, Bonnie.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Wonderful. All right, so that brings us to the meat of our meeting tonight. Welcome to Ryan and Matthew. Matt, did you go Matthew or Matt?
Matt's fine.
Matt, fine, okay. From Vertex, we're really excited to have you here, and the other Brian is joining us via Zoom, so welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
And Brian, actually, we have a couple slides just for.
We do. Katie, would it be possible to make me a presenter or able to share my screen? So while she's letting me do that, we just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves. It may be a little redundant from the interview, as I see a few familiar faces from the interview selection team. But thank you for having us, and I'll share my screen and we'll go through a few slides, and I'll let Brian Jarvis start.
Great, yeah, so thank you, we're glad to be here, an exciting project, looking forward to it, and good to see you all again. We've already been off and running with John and Katie and Dan, so at first, I think we're a good meeting on Tuesday. Tonight, just quick introductions for those of you who might not have met us at the interview. Brian's gonna talk a little bit about a proposed timeline based on conversations we've already had with the team here. Some milestone expectations, and then either budget discussion, open questions, and just kind of get rolling. Next slide. For those of you who haven't met us, I'm Brian Jarvis, Director of OPM Service with the Vertex Companies. I've been doing OPM work for over 15 years, 20 years in the construction industry. Worked with Brian and Matt before, worked with John before. Brian will introduce himself, Matt will introduce himself. We also have a couple people shown that, you know, as the project progresses, may join the team in Alan and Diane, and also kind of down below is a list of resources that we have internally at Vertex for kind of technical experts if needed on the project at any point in time, whether it's an engineer or an environmental scientist or something like that. We have the ability to pull people in as needed to help out with the project. The only sub-consultant we use is PM&C, which is cost estimated. So if we decide to do a second estimate, it'd be PM&C and Fogarty, kind of reconciling with one another. Brian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Also Brian with a Y again. Been with Vertex for a little over 10 years now, doing strictly OPM work. Matt and I have a lot of experience, and Brian and I have a lot of experience on other municipal jobs. Myself and Matt are actually wrapping up one of your neighbor senior centers down the street in Littleton. Looking forward to having anybody invited on the 16th of May. We're having a ribbon cutting. It was a great project, and looking forward to kind of show it off to everybody. So looking forward to starting up a new one, and looking forward to getting going. So I'll give it over to Matt.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Matt Sturz, project manager. Been in public construction about 14 years, 8 of which has been in OPM and the landscape architect by training before I made a transition career to OPM work. As Brian said, we just got a certificate of occupancy actually down the street in Middleton, and really enjoyed working with these guys, and looking forward to working with you.
Yeah, so Brian Ford is kind of the running point for us, making sure that you're getting the service that we pride ourselves on. That will kind of be the day-to-day, making sure all the trains are running on time. And looking forward to getting started. And we have worked together before with John and Dan. I did the Walpole Council on Aging a couple of years ago, so that was a great success. And
when he was a very young whippersnapper.
Young whippersnapper. Learned a lot from John, so glad to be back working with him. So, and just quickly on the firm, if we're at the interview, didn't see the slides. We do strictly OPM work. We have about 48 people in our Norwood office, all dedicated to OPM work, doing whether that's public work, municipality work, schools, fire stations, senior centers. We do OPM work for colleges and institutions, and some healthcare institutions as well. We've done over 100 projects in the last 15 years, 2 million up to over 300 million in construction value, total project value. We do have those resources available right here in Massachusetts in our Weymouth office and throughout the state, which we could use at any moment if we needed it. We believe in an intense brand of customer service, trying to exceed your expectations, which has led to a lot of successful projects, satisfied clients. Really pride ourselves on repeat business. We work with over 30 towns and cities and private clients, a lot of municipalities with 3 or more. I personally have a couple of clients where we've done 4 or 5 public projects. We're currently still working for them. So that all procured the same way, which is a testament that we must be doing something right. So hopefully we can continue that success here. Next slide. And just quickly on kind of our background, kind of showing some of the buildings we've worked on that are comparable to what you're planning here in this senior center community recreation arena. We have over 25 something projects that are some form of a senior center or community center, town hall, plus over 50 public safety projects, libraries and DPWs. The Walpole project that we did with John is the top right, so that came out great. And Pembroke right below, we just opened last spring. That was a great success. Similar town to Ayer on the South Shore. So that was a lot of fun. I hope to repeat that here.
Great. Also, Center Square is our Littleton project as well. So that was taken a couple months ago. The next time you see it, the hardscape and kind of the putting a bow on the building will be completed at that point. So
There won't be snow on the roof.
right, hiding our solar panels.
Yeah.
Talking about some of the upcoming schedule. Matt, did you want to jump in and talk kind of a broad view of what we're talking about for the next 8 months? We understand that we have our head around what our town meeting schedule is and ultimately what the funding schedule is. And we kind of wanted to lay it out in a very 30,000 foot view for you guys. And then I'll kind of get into a little bit with the nitty gritty for this committee specifically, with some draft ideas and agendas that we would work with Katie in drafting those to make sure that we're making the best use of your time.
Sure. So I'll touch on sort of high level here, and then Brian has sort of a more in-depth look at some of the milestones within this. But just looking, beginning with the schematic design phase, we're just launching into now. We've completed the concept. Time to add enough detail that we can do another round of pricing, confirm that we remain on budget, but also have enough detail to get into to estimate, but then also, as you can see, Brian's identified the environmental and permitting due diligence phase that we would anticipate following the completion of a schematic design, which is on target for the end of June of this year. So the first couple of lines there build towards the end of June for the completion of a schematic design and correspondingly an updated cost estimate. Some of that environmental items include sort of permitting. We need to have the site and the building footprint designed to a level that we are able to realistically assess what might be required from the permitting standpoint, which is why that falls where it does in this timeline. And so working on that design and having received an estimate, we'll follow that with budget analysis, reviewing where we are in terms of total project budget beyond just construction cost. That's a big piece of it, but there are other items that compose the complete total project budget that we'll want to make sure that we're on track for there. We understand that the funding ask would be October 27th, I think is the date that we're working for. So we want to lead up to that with some community engagement, which we would anticipate being early fall, September through the funding ask and the town meeting vote, the town ballot, excuse me, on the 15th. So that's sort of high level. There are some milestones within that, and I think Brian, you wanted to sort of dig into that a little bit deeper.
Excuse me,
The top line is.
did we get a copy of this?
I'll make sure we.
Yeah, it would be helpful, because I'm having.
The very first entry says 6-1 on the right, if I'm reading the right. It's 6:30, I believe.
Yeah, that's, well, that's, yeah, I think they got 6:30 on. Does the funding end out first?
The first two should be 6:30.
6:30.
That's correct. Yes, that's a typo. That should be 6:30.
That should be 6:30.
That corresponds with the funding that is getting us through the end of schematic design. Those two dates should be the same, correct?
Okay.
Understood. We can make that correction. And then some of the dates that are on here for the town ballot, that was a best guess on where that was. I don't believe that information is on the town website at this time. But this is kind of a broad view of how we see it and some of the things that are going to be needed. If I can go on to the next, which kind of I took a best guess, currently knowing what your building committee schedule is on a monthly basis, and trying to parse things out and how we see the schematic design process go on, working with the committee. So in addition to the building committee meetings, we also are going to implement some working group meetings that will be leading up to each building committee meetings. And that's where we get with the project team, we get with Catlin and his any consultants and his project manager, and starting to flesh out and getting through the details and making sure that we are hitting the milestones that we are at, so that when we come to these building committee meetings, we're able to present and provide the packet and all the contents for it to be distributed prior to. What I've done is I've created a schedule such that we're meeting on the second and fourth Thursdays of every month. Understanding that this is just a draft, these schedules, there may be less to talk about or more to talk about, and we ultimately, as we leave our working group committee, we would be generating the agenda for the following building committee. But to go through some of just a kind of a high level of how we see on a monthly basis, we would be looking for invoice recommendations that we would bring to the committee. And I do have here for our next meeting on the 10th of April is to give the committee a quick course, a quick 101 course on our vendor invoice packet and how we're going to be presenting to that. That may be an opportunity for us to bring our accounting representative to join the meeting as well, so that there can be any changes made to make sure that we're catering it to you, to make sure that we're presenting the budget and the invoices accordingly as you want, as you see fit. We would meet towards the end of April. This is where I had items such as town utility discussion, and speaking with Dan this week at our working group meeting. You know, we have some design for utilities such as water and fiber and electric, all of which need to be coordinated and designed and ultimately funded by this project. We want some updates on environmental discussions and our permitting. And then we need to discuss some of the town board engagement that we need to have to do, inclusive of the planning board, conservation, any other town requirements that we're going to need to make sure that we're engaging with them. We're having informal meetings. We're letting them know what their project is, and if there's any red flags that they see at this time that we can head off early in the process. As we move into May, we'll have another round of invoice recommendations. And one thing I have here is a soft cost discussion. As we build our total project budget, currently right now we have everything that's been approved and committed to date, and that's going to start really building on itself for the potential ask at fall town meeting. Inclusive of that are going to be our contingencies, our furniture costs, our IT infrastructure that's going to need to be needed, any audio visual requirements. I can speak for myself and Matt that down the street in Littleton, we were throwing a little curveball with what the requirements were needed of that senior center. They wanted to be able to broadcast meetings such as this out of their multi-purpose room. And so being able to identify that early in design, making sure provisions are there. If extra design for audiovisual consultants need to be included, we need to be prepared for that, and make sure that we have everything in the guts of the building, so that when we engage with an audiovisual representative, that they're able to put their systems in as intended. Moving to the end of May, providing some environmental progress. If there's anything that we see as hurdles for this, or anything that we need to speak with any regulatory bodies, the DEP, for that environmental impact report. We foresee a design update or a presentation at that point. There may be some decisions that need to be made or some tweaks in the design or floor plans that need to be presented to the committee. We want to make sure that you guys are engaged on that. And then another thing I've put on here is before we go out to a cost estimate, and I believe there has been some identified already. I believe the pickleball court has been identified, but making sure if there's any alternates need to be part of this. If there's anything that's a want, not a need, or something that we feel as though we would benefit by getting broken out pricing for, this is the time to maybe do that before we go out to a cost estimate, so that a cost estimator can do a separate exercise and we actually know a cost of some certain item. We try not to make too many of them, but ultimately it's a good tool for the committee in case things need to be broken out. Working into June, we'd have another round of invoice recommendations, a drawing review towards the end of the month prior to going out for our estimate, update with our meetings that we've had with town boards, And then also put into place our strategy for community engagement. I know we spoke about it at our interview. My opinion and my best practices is making sure that we're hitting as many different sub-communities within the community, whether it's a breakfast at the senior center or library when families are there. We want to make sure that we're reaching as many taxpayers as possible when we're trying to get the word out about this project. And then looking ahead, once we go out for a cost estimate, there will be a little bit of waiting at that point. Those usually take about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on whether or not, and I know it's our recommendation on going with a separate cost estimate. There'll also be a reconciliation after that where we would have a meeting. And the subsequent meetings after that would be us building that total project budget, making sure that we're comfortable going to when the warrant is closing in September. So that's kind of a quick crash course on where I see for the next 3 to 4 months for this committee. Obviously, I know dates can change and the actual the topics of discussion and the agendas may change as well. Those will be generated with Katie from our working group meetings if there are things that we feel is a priority that needs to be spoken about at certain building committees. Any questions on milestones or where we see for the next few months?
You have no intention to talk to any committees about talking to us first before you go to a committee in town, correct?
That's good.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's just a matter of building that schedule of what's the sequence that you need to go to, running up the town meeting, and make sure that we're hitting, all the information that you need to get to, whether it's FinCom or something like that, that's all planned out. Yeah, the goal, I mean, typically how we do it is that before you start. And again, the community engagement, I think we're talking about how we're engaging all throughout the schematic design, but that ramp up the town meeting, that kind of intense time period, we kind of call the roadshow, and that becomes what is it that you want to present? We have everything all finished here first, and this is what we're going to take on the road, if you will, kind of to the different communities and how you want to present.
I didn't quite understand, or hear you, Ken's question.
My question was, I know they're probably eager to get going, so I was trying to anticipate that they would not, let's say, call planning right now, or call the building inspector right now, or call any other town department right now, and so we clarify the sequence here, because we've done a lot of that already. So they're already aware of a lot of this stuff. So, plus we have members of other boards that sit here in these groups.
Him, he's guilty. I just pointing my finger. That's who you know, Mark.
So, yeah, we know.
Okay, good.
And are we definitely, decided that, we wait till fall town meeting, to make this just, this request of our citizens, or is special town meeting still on the table?
I think if that's a request we want to make, when we've done a lot of talking about whether a special town meeting is a more advantageous way to get support for the project. Just anecdotally, when it's been brought up in conversation, the select board has not been interested in a early September date or anything in the summer, because people are on vacation and starting school, and they want to make sure that they're able to have a meeting is well represented. And then I think once you get past that mid-September spot, then you're like, why not just wait till October? So, but I mean, that's not my decision. I'm just relaying what I've conversationally heard. So I think if we want to make a different ask, then you can certainly do that.
I'll make a couple of quick comments and I hope we'll hear something from our OPM on this. The earlier the town meeting, whether it's, I've already commented about special town meeting. We never lose in special town meetings, but we sometimes lose in the general town meeting because everybody's there and there's always some group that's going to push against it. Special town meeting, generally our group comes out to that, and that's very positive. But the real issue too is that if we wait till, I saw on the schedule mid-November, we're deeper into winter conditions. Now, last 2 winters ago, we built through winter conditions and it was very mild and we poured concrete and did all that stuff. But we don't know what that comes up. So the idea that it's a 6 week, if we're good about it, 6 to 8 weeks bid period. That puts us well into December and mid to late September. And now we're doing our foundations, frozen ground perhaps. So I'm just saying that if I could do it in August, which I know we can't because everybody's on vacation, but people are back, school starts, so people are back the second week of September. They're available. And a special town meeting is really for loading it with retirees. I mean, I'm being a little bit Machiavellian about it, but
Just wouldn't happen that the town would support a special town meeting that was so close to a fall town meeting. And the fall town meeting typically is a small town meeting, so it's almost like a special town meeting.
yeah, and I'll live with that. I completely accept that. I'm just saying that that's our experience today. That's all it is. And the other thing is, if we can save a month, I'm all for that, but we'll deal with it as it comes. That probably pushes our numbers up a little bit, not a lot. But I'm just want to be aware that winter conditions, and this is a steel building with concrete decks. It's always a challenge.
No, and I think that is something based on our initial understanding of where the select board was.
Yeah.
That they were, favorably disposed to a special town meeting. Based on what Katie has said, it appears that they are backing away from that commitment.
We'll go with the way they want.
Oh, sure. Well, we can't do it without them, so.
I know.
We have,
Hey, wait, can't we have vitamin? No, but you're right. We have to follow the lead. I want to put out there that our special town meetings have been very successful.
I'm happy to check back in with the town manager's office and
And that month is a big help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole thing. If we have a strong argument for moving the town meeting earlier, having a special town meeting, then we need to know exactly what those arguments are. And, and put forward those arguments.
and I think that the other advantage, I mean, as a political strategy, the special town meeting, I think, has its advantages for us. But I also, having attended many town meetings, that having a single warrant article with a single dedicated presentation regarding this allows for a fuller discussion of the issues involved and the pros and the cons, and allows for a deeper kind of conversation on town meeting floor, as opposed to a more general town meeting where you might get, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 30 articles, all of which are intended to be gone through that evening, therefore diluting, any particular one. So what I would say is that, although I understand that, what I would say is I would like to keep the possibility still open that if things proceed apace and we're able to kind of hit the timelines and get all our I's dotted and T's crossed, that the possibility of a special town meeting earlier in the fall should remain there. And, if things line up, if we get the stars lined up, then we're able to get it done.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I would say one thing. 2 winters ago, it was a great construction. This past winter was not great. We had 15 degrees below average pretty much across the board through December, January, and into February. And that's the key point that we're building. We just don't know about that. I would defer that if we go to October, November, October, and get the vote by the 15th of November, right? Is that right? That we would be certainly, if it's not a great winter, it'll be tough. If it's a good winter, not worried about it.
I can
We
check
already
in.
talked about the fact that going to this town meeting with schematic design.
Right.
Then you had to start design development and final draft.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
We're
We're not, oh,
3 to 4 months.
I stand completely corrected.
You-
It's gonna be a spring
Forget
construction.
about it. You know, you're not gonna
Spring.
get your work done
I-
for 3 to 4 months
completely-
after the vote.
I'm,
Then we have the bidding, then we have.
normally I'm going to
we
town
have
meeting
the-
with complete
What do you
set.
call it, qualifications of the subs.
I'm
and-
elderly.
I was letting it go.
You know,
I know,
So you're
I'm
talking
elderly.
6 months after.
Hey, thanks, Brian.
I was gonna ask
Just
you
let
for
me
work
dig
plan.
my own hole.
Like that.
Can we clarify
Yeah,
that now?
yeah, you're absolutely right. Ken, thank you.
Yes.
And
You're my
no
buddy.
one, no one wanted to stop
Dan,
me.
why did you say something?
Yeah, no, I wrote it.
Yeah,
down.
no, we have to go. We will bid, we'll bid and,
So I was letting you go on the strategy of town meeting, but then.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry.
yeah, that's,
What your work plan for design, because I was thinking we'd be able to get.
We normally-
Following summer, be ready to go for the.
sorry, I
fall.
was, I was smoking some dope on the way up.
Where is it? Can we share it?
Oh,
It's-
yeah,
it's not-
you're right.
Believe me.
No, no more advantage. Wipe that off. Thank
That's why, that's really why we were hoping to have a
Sorry.
spring special town meeting
Right.
November.
for our original plan. We were trying to get published, but
I don't know.
alas, no. Okay,
And-
If you can get the design done by the fall for free, then we'll go for it.
Oh, there you go.
Well, that's where you are.
All right.
okay. Any other questions?
Angle there.
For the folks at Vertex, what would you like to hear from, or what would you like from the committee members in terms of the information you would like us to give you at these meetings or between meetings? Question, that is, what would be helpful for you to receive from us? As the project unfolds between now and the end of June.
Well, I mean, typically, the way that we structure it is that we'd be bringing information to you. You'd kind of ideally be updating that work plan in advance, so you understand what meetings we're gonna have updates from John, what decisions might be put in front of you, and obviously some of those decisions might take a meeting or 2 or 3 or so that forth. So the goal would be to get information to you. If you have questions and inputs that you want to come to us, I mean, our suggestion is to run through Katie and Dan. And then we're kind of working with John and the team, in between the building committees to then address those items and bring it forward. I think the goal would be, you've already worked through programming with John and Katie's already worked through programming. I think it's the input from you is then that you're comfortable with the layout of the building, you're comfortable with the materials of the building, you're comfortable with the programming of the building, you're comfortable with how we're strategizing alternates. You're comfortable with what we have for budgets. But our goal is to provide all that to you in advance. I think also from a sustainability perspective, where do you want to go with the building from that perspective? So that's something that we can build into the schedule, so you have enough time to analyze the types of systems that are being presented, cost benefit analysis, those types of things. You're comfortable with the strategy on construction schedule, because obviously that duration drives general conditions. So we'll start bringing all those pieces, but I think realistically, our goal is to bring as much information to you to let you make informed decisions. And if you have questions and input, send them through Katie and Dan.
Yeah, I think you're getting to a good point, Brian, and kind of channels of communication. Really, Katie will be kind of the point, right, Katie, in between, as we're gonna have this working group that's working on, the weeds of the design, but then kind of bring it back to the committee. So Katie will work point between designer, OPM for the committee. So, we don't want like every random person bombarding the OPM or the designer. It's just not efficient. It's not gonna
Well, it's
work.
also dangerous because
Yeah.
things get out, especially
Right,
whenever we get to construction sometime in the spring. We will be very clear about that. The committee certainly has a lot of input, but not in the construction process. I mean, out there in the field. We've had committee members come out and direct the contractor.
I'm gonna tell them to put that walking roof back on.
I know.
No, I mean, actually, we have a good slide. I mean,
Yeah, that'll help.
We have a good slide that we can show is, the structure we set up is really, you have those very specific task or, initiative type groups that need to meet, like we gotta meet with the DPW, like we have to meet with the utility companies. We have to, like, maybe there's a color committee at some point where maybe you have a representative on that to kind of figure out what you want for the color palette or materials.
Yeah.
That kind of rolls up to the working, the goal of the working group is really not to make any major decisions, it's to coordinate all of the stuff that needs to come together to bring everything in front of this committee to make major decisions. And those major
Yeah.
decisions go back down, and then we keep basically keeping the project on track. So that's how we typically set it up. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the committee's project that we're, able to make informed decisions.
So, so I guess for me, what an extension, that is, each of the committee members will have to be doing their homework between the meetings to make sure they have a handle on what decisions are gonna be need to be made at the next upcoming building meeting.
And our goal is to, again, bring as much of that information in advance and build up for things and get you packaged well in advance. You're just not seeing it for the first time at meetings. Like, the goal is not to come to a meeting and say, hey, you have to decide on this massive thing.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what's coming. Here's information to start building that, as we get it.
Yeah,
And then getting packets well in advance that we can talk about. And again, sometimes decisions are, you need to talk about the first meeting and we'll make a decision on the second meeting.
Yeah.
But our goal is also to say, well, a decision needs to be made at this meeting so it can release this and keep us on schedule.
right, okay, now that's helpful for me, yeah.
This is kind of a random thing and it's way early, but what's your take on pre-qualifications for bidding?
Take on
Or do
pre-qualification.
you usually prefer that or not?
We're gonna
It's
have,
not a real big project. It's not like $100 million.
we're gonna have,
Well, it's
to,
gonna be
it's in
10, right?
excess of 10 million, Mass General law requires.
Oh, yeah, well,
We're gonna have to. I mean, typically we try to do the GCs at a minimum, just to kind of weed out the
Yeah.
ones who don't know what to do.
I would prefer that, yeah.
And the subs, depending on the size of the package, like you might not have to do a flooring sub, but you might want to do the electrical and the MEP, depending on the
Yeah.
value, so.
Might be important to do the flooring sub if I saw the.
For a project of this size, I would anticipate having to pre-qualify roughly 8 to 10 filed sub bids, and then the general contractors would also need to be done as well. And John, we would head that effort with our procurement manager. And if once we got to that once we get to that point in the schedule, we'd identify a member from the town, a couple members from the town, a member from your office, and then our team as well, who would kind of head that pre-qual effort, so that when we go out to bidding, that's the first sheet that's on the bid documents is who's been pre-qualified to bid on this project.
Yeah, we actually have a dedicated team that does nothing but pre-quals and bidding.
That's because they do really big.
Lorraine, you
projects.
remember working with Lorraine?
Yeah, yeah.
So Lorraine kind of heads that up now, so she does, I don't know how many of those a year, 10, 12, 15 of those a year.
God bless her.
Yeah. There's guys down at pretty successful, and again, one of our big tenets is the team plan execute, making sure you get a qualified contractor pool. Again, you have enough competition for what you want to do, but you feel comfortable with anyone getting is the key, because that's going to make or break the project at the end of the day.
Right. Anything else? And did you want to talk about your,
So we've done quite a bit of work with John, and John has provided us cost data from Fogarty, so I wanted to follow up with that to give it to you guys. So John, in that packet, it's the last of your project cost estimates, which was revised on the 17th. So I've been providing the committee and John's been checking this draft that I put together, which is a breakdown of the construction, but cost by division. So I've taken John's project total cost and broke it down by division. So the committee could have a better idea of some of the actual pieces of the puzzle. I know you guys will end up doing the same thing or more, but I want to let you know that we have been attentive to this along the way with John. So John has given us a number of these project updates starting from back last summer. And then as he's given it to us, I've revised the breakdown. Now, the breakdown I used on the cost by division is based on my experience, but also on the fact that he gave us the cost numbers from 2 projects that he had completed. So the
Same size.
Long Meadow and Wilbraham. So I basically took those projects, broke them down into the same pieces and laid it into a spreadsheet. And then added the same types of things that we're going to be talking about, which is going to be close to add alternates and the other breakdowns to get it. And as John revised his numbers, I revised this, I just updated it today, actually. So kind of been following along with this from the get-go in an attempt to try to not just resolve the budget, but to try to find cost savings in the budget. So that's just for you guys to know what we're
That's a
doing.
great job, Bill.
John,
Thank
these
you.
were both hard bid, 149 hard bid.
Where's that?
The previous project data is based on chapter 149 hard bid,
Yeah, everything is.
as opposed to.
Yeah.
These are based on
The last project was just literally finished.
on their,
a few months
these
ago.
are on their schedule values.
And
Yeah.
just as a little bit of a 30,000 foot view, so the project cost, the 16.6 that we've been working with. This is obviously coming down from that, but that is sort of in response to the idea that the town manager's office and the select board and capital planning and FinCom were most comfortable with a bond around 10 million. And so they had offered a capital stabilization contribution. So we were 16.6 with a $2 million capital stabilization commitment, $1 million of the UDAG funds, and then based on 200,000 of legislative earmarks and 1.3 million in CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant funds, which left roughly a $2 million gap. And so then these latest budgets are the attempt to bridge that $2 million gap there.
What was the third million? You had the capital stabilization, $1 million for.
UDAG, you did, that's the Urban Development Action
Right.
Grant, that was money given to the town by the state when the
Yep.
base closed.
Yeah, this is a good memo Robert put together some.
Oh, yeah, I'll forward that memo
Yeah.
from capital planning.
Were there design requirements for the CDBG?
No, I don't
Like
think
on the
so.
exterior or anything?
No, I can look into that as well.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I was under I have the understanding that we're definitely gonna do the multipurpose room, partition so that we can have lunches and also have exercise. But why do we still have it under an ad hoc?
Well, Brian started talking a little bit about that. We need to have some ad alternates to allow us to hit the number, because it's, somebody else is telling what it's gonna cost. So understand that the partition is, all the infrastructure is in place. The partition at any time can be installed without interrupting the operation of the building. But we need to have some flexibility. And by the way, once the OPM gets a chance to look at this, we might come up with other alternates too. We should have no more than about 4 or 5 next.
Look at the one not that, the other one, or look for breakdown. Should have a breakdown.
Good Lord. Ken,
That's where the work is.
Some of these look like they're.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me just summarizing what I did.
Sure,
So
sure.
my effort was to take the long breakdown that Fogarty had done, it might have been, I don't know, 20 pages, and summarize it into the divisions of work that I'm familiar with working with. So I don't have every single little detail and nut and bolt here, but the best I could do in the summary of the major pieces of work. And then the final page, I did it a little differently than John. I added a little more to the ad alternates than John had, given us before, just to make it other thoughts that we're gonna have along the way. And that's why it's a little bit more broad-based, but it doesn't, to answer Alan's question, I think it's up to John that we were trying to highlight the fact that if we had an excess in the budget, that we could go back and say that's an ad alternate. Maybe we could postpone putting it in now, but we could put it in later. Was that the idea? That's an ad
Yeah,
alternate.
well, quite honestly, we have a contingency that we hardly have ever spent. Usually about 0.5% of your town's contingency. And generally the town takes that and then buys in their ad alternates. But I can tell you right now that we've got a good list here. Some of it's FF&E, it's in the FF&E. And FF&E is pretty fungible, yeah. You can move it around too. You can buy parts of it or not all of
Right,
it.
what I found out,
But you're not really funding that with the GC, you're funding that.
when I saw those breakdowns from the two
Yeah.
buildings, it was obvious that that's exactly what they did. So in some cases, they had FF&E as an alternate because it was the furniture piece, but the fitness equipment was included and all the kitchen equipment was included. So they did move it around.
Who's they?
The list from Fogarty.
No,
Yeah, I'm telling you, it was different. Each building was a little bit different, wasn't
The
it?
kitchen is in the base bid.
I know that. So in some of them, so was FF&E was some in the basement.
Yes, those-
So depending on how they.
Yeah, we'll work that out.
Great, so we'll
Yeah.
put together,
Yeah.
we have a total project budget form that we typically
Yeah.
use, so we'll put that
It'll
together.
be very helpful.
This is awesome, start.
Yeah. Tim's always been good about this thing.
That's good.
And one thing I'd like to add too is, and this would be a discussion probably a year from now, is once the design really starts evolving, there'll be multiple other cost estimates that happen where we'll have checkpoints and have an understanding on where our budget is and whether or not we need to scale back or whether we need to create some more alternates. And at that point is when we would have a meeting with the building committee on prioritizing those alternates. As per Mass General Law, they need to go in order if we are to select them.
Yep.
So it's a discussion for another day, but however, that would be the process on how we would identify them and what's most important to the committee and what's least important.
Yeah, the fact that you're out ahead of it is great, and it's, you know, I agree with John, you wanna try to do things that are kind of self-contained scopes that are easy to, it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's not a bunch of whole lot of contractors, it's like one contractor, maybe two, and there's things that you can add easily back into the project if the bids come in favorably and you can take three of them, great, they're back in the project, or even if you can't afford them at that point, maybe you don't use all your contingency and then you put the screen wall at the end or something like that.
Yeah, or you might put it in, the job's all done, the contractor's gone, and you get some funding for the for a partition. You know, it can come in,
Yeah,
and it can be done without interrupting it. The idea that the infrastructure that holds the partition and the power system is all there in the base bid. And then you're just gonna drop in $100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we get to the, you know, cross the fingers, when we get to a bidding scenario, we'll have the list of alternates, we'll have the contingency, and there's little soft cost moves that we can make on bid day. You know, the goal is you wanna have enough flexibility so that, you know, ideally the bids come in under what you're expecting, but if they're on or not, you have ability in the budget to still accept them and still move on with the project. So we've been pretty successful with that.
I mean, one thing that, I toured Groton, and it's come up in a couple of the other ones that I toured, is that the IT AV sound system infrastructure be in place and robust,
100%.
from the get-go, so that we're not finding out that there's not enough bandwidth or there's not a screen where one ought to be.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, the stuff that goes in the wall is what you prioritize, and then the stuff that is number two, it's always changing too. So like what you put in day one, 5 years from now, you're gonna change to something else potentially,
Yeah.
but you want the infrastructure to be there, so.
Yeah, a good example is that we've, ever since we worked on this project in Tallahassee, we discovered that there is for elders with hearing aids, we put in a hearing loop system in the multi-purpose room. And we tie that into the speaker system so that people with hearing problems, it's like somebody, yeah, I know. I'll shout at you, Ken, don't worry. No, it's really critical. And that's something that goes in the concrete floor. So that gets into the system, and that's part of it, but that's base bid, it's an AV item, but it's in the base bid. And then there's other things like everything from security to like a number of our towns come in and put in a full TV system, the community TV, which is a big deal. Now, like Wellesley, we call it Wellesley, you guys work there. Their community TV paid for it all. They had a budget for it, but we had to provide the infrastructure.
Yeah,
for it.
need conduit to run their.
Yeah, and whatever. So those decisions get made, as you were suggesting, and Brian up in the screen, is that this stuff will be happening in the in the construction document phase. Working with the town. And we don't usually put AV in our bid like they do with schools and things, because the town usually has their own vendor that they work with and all their around town. So we carry that as a separate item, that your AV people will start working with us on what that's going to cost and put it in to Vertex's budget that they're going to be working on with us. So that's all
Yeah, the worksheet that we have, the total budget worksheet is exactly that's a working document. It's not necessarily
It moves.
public. It moves up and down with every estimate and so, and as we start to get these vendors and we get actual back charges from utility companies. But the goal is that we have an item for everything and we've made sure that is there cost associated with this line item or not? And that becomes a living thing. And then the way that it gets updated is every time you have a pricing milestone. So here's where we were tonight. Here's where we were when we got the schematic design budget and the project gets approved. Here's where we are with the DD estimate. You kind of see the three prices, all iterations, what's changed, how do you want to move things around and
We make adjustments in the drawings. We hopefully will have a number that everybody's happy with, that we have to hit. The best we can. Early in DD, so that we're not making major,
that's right.
we don't wanna do it, somebody comes along and says, you know. I wanna move the elevator. It won't happen, but we wanna make sure that that is all. Worked out in the process of that.
So probably for next meeting, we'll probably give you an outline of what that budget looks like to make sure we accounted for everything. You know, here's some things that, you know, we saw that maybe, hey, we've seen this in other projects, you need this here,
Yeah.
just to make sure, again, it starts with almost everything under the sun, and then we decide what's actually gonna be the project. Because we know there might be some permitting things that come out of it, you know, some things related to heritage that might be later in the game this summer with, we have to tweak something here or there, and just good to allow for that in the estimates.
And then we asked Evans for a third of the project.
It's,
That'd be great.
this is a great start, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
And do we know where the, in terms of that, we talked about this the last meeting, the MEPA and the MES, you know, what the timeline for those approvals will be?
After the site plan's done, go back, as we talked
Yeah.
about.
And it could take up to 2 months for them to get back with us.
No, they get that quick. Look at that.
Yeah,
They just need more data from us. It's clear.
right. And the good thing is we've met with them twice now, so they're well aware of the project and it's sort of kind of like they're starting from scratch in a review.
They've been out in front of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been very.
Any update on National Grid and where that's gonna?
No, not right now. I gotta.
Good luck.
Check in with them.
We're doing it
Yeah.
on Tuesday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so we did have a kind of initial kickoff working group meeting was brought up earlier, but. You know, kind of got everyone up to speed, Vertex is aware of, you know, everything we've done now, and Matt did a good job, we have some meeting minutes from that, which are. Good, so.
Yeah.
It was a good kickoff, yeah.
All right.
so that's it, looking forward to it.
So we start construction on December 15th.
Right.
You can, my guys.
Thanks for everybody interrupting me, saying, what the hell are you talking about?
Where are you gonna get your shovel?
Yeah, Alzheimer's, you know, it's catching us. Watch me closely.
Anything else before we move to public input?
Oh,
No, all right.
it's been very
Any
helpful.
Public input.
Do we know who iPhone is? Or
No. All right, if there is no public input, then our next meeting, so if we said second and fourth Thursdays, is everyone amenable to that? That brings us actually April 10th.
Second and fourth week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, good, because for some reason I wrote something else down.
Right, April 10th, 6 p.m. here. Okay.
For clarification, is the next meeting going to be the working group meeting, or is it going to be this committee meeting twice a month? Thought it was an alternate working group. Meeting, then the committee meeting. So the committee ended up meeting maybe once a twice a month.
That's
Is that
what
right?
you guys
Is that
think.
right?
No, so I think what we talked about laying out was, scheduling 2 committee meetings.
Two committee meetings a month?
If you decide you need,
And do a Zoom meeting.
we'll take both.
Working group.
And then the working group meeting, we're gonna try to have in between that, so that we're actually
Alternate
working,
weeks.
working on stuff alternate weeks, so we have stuff to send to you in advance of the meeting. So we're gonna meet on, you're gonna be on the 10th, we're gonna meet the week of the 3rd.
Okay.
Put that all together, so you have a packet on the 10th, and then we'll meet the week of the 17th or whatever, so. So we're gonna really be every 2 weeks, give or take, with the working group meeting, keep John on schedule, so we start construction in December.
Yeah, right.
And then the building committee, as long as we have one per month, you're at least getting administrative stuff done, seeing an update, but I think you get the calendar blocked off for you and you can decide if you need both. So there might be a month where it's just depend,
Yeah,
head
there,
down month getting stuff done and we'll come back in the following month.
there'll be a number of times when we just don't have to have a meeting.
That's right, but you don't wanna be scrambling if
But we'll keep them scheduled that way, and then
gives us targets and.
Yeah.
when things start moving along into the design process, lots of meetings get canceled, that's because stuff is getting done. But we have to then revisit when issues come up,
Yep.
and that's where the committee needs to make a decision. on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be times when we need to just give Catlin a little runway.
Thank you.
Not many, but.
So I get a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, Kenneth,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Dan,
All right.
Carolyn. Bonnie.
Aye.
The chair says aye. We are adjourned.
How did this happen?
6:57.
Wow.